Across the world, it is easy to believe that zoos and aquariums can solve extinction. We see incubators, hand-raised cubs, and planned breeding programs, and it feels like a safety net for wild animals. If things go wrong, we will just keep a few in captivity and start again. Captive breeding has rescued some species by giving them controlled environments where they are protected from predators, fed reliably, treated by vets, and paired with chosen mates. It works best for animals that accept fences and glass, eat food we can easily provide, and live in social groups we understand. But the system has hard limits. It struggles with species that travel huge distances, live in extreme environments, or shut down completely under stress. Some depend on migration routes, deep oceans, complex social signals, or diets that are almost impossible to copy. For them, captivity is not a simpler version of the wild. It is a different world that their bodies and minds are not built for. In this video, we look at 7 such animals. We start in the treetops with the 3-fingered sloth, an animal that seems calm and harmless, but falls apart the moment you take it out of the canopy. It lives high in the rainforest, moves slowly, eats only certain leaves, and spends most of its life hanging from branches. That slow lifestyle hides a hard truth. 3-fingered sloths are extremely delicate, and they simply do not cope well with captivity. When they are taken from the wild, many become sick or stop eating, and a large number die within a few months. Zoos and rescue centers struggle to match their exact diet, temperature, and stress levels, and the animals often never reach a stable, healthy condition. As a result, they rarely live long enough or stay strong enough to reproduce. So far, there has been no reliable, repeated success in breeding 3-fingered sloths in captivity. Even basic facts like their exact gestation length still come from limited observations in the wild. Down on the forest floor, another slow-moving specialist struggles even more in captivity, the pangolin. Covered in scales and about the size of a small dog, pangolins are shy, nocturnal mammals that feed almost entirely on specific ants and termites. That specialized diet is the first problem. In the wild, they move between many nests, licking up insects with a long, sticky tongue. In zoos and rescue facilities, keepers struggle to recreate that mix with artificial diets or frozen insects, and many pangolins lose weight, develop stomach problems, or simply stop eating. On top of that, they are extremely sensitive to stress, and loud noises, handling, and unfamiliar surroundings can weaken them quickly. As a result, most pangolins kept in captivity die within months, long before they have a chance to reproduce. A few births have been recorded in rescue centers and specialized facilities, but these are rare and have not yet led to large, self-sustaining captive populations. On the other end of the size scale is the tarsier, a tiny nocturnal primate with huge eyes that looks almost made for a zoo display, but reacts to captivity like a slow-motion emergency. Tarsiers live in dense tropical forests, leaping between branches at night to hunt insects and small animals, and spending the day hidden and still. In cages and small enclosures, most of that natural behavior collapses. They are extremely sensitive to noise, light, and handling. Many wild-caught tarsiers stop eating, injure themselves, or die from stress soon after capture. Even when they survive, breeding them has proven almost impossible on any reliable scale. A few births have happened in specialized centers, but many infants were stillborn or died shortly after, and no long-term, self-sustaining breeding colonies have been created. Most places that show tarsiers to tourists still depend on taking new animals from the wild, because so few live long enough or stay stable enough to reproduce under human care. Leaving the forest behind, we move into shallow tropical seas with the dugong, a marine mammal, sometimes called a sea cow, but one that proves very difficult to manage in captivity. Dugongs live in warm coastal waters and spend most of their time slowly grazing on seagrass meadows, moving across large areas to find enough fresh growth. In aquariums and marine parks, that lifestyle becomes a serious problem. They need huge amounts of specific seagrass, which is difficult and expensive to provide, and many individuals lose weight or develop health problems when their food is replaced with artificial diets. They are also sensitive, social animals that react badly to cramped spaces, loud noise, and frequent disturbance. As a result, only a handful of dugongs have ever been kept in captivity worldwide, and most did not live anywhere near their natural lifespan. There is still no successful captive breeding program that produces healthy calves and grows the population. Much further offshore, in colder, deeper water, the great white shark shows us a different kind of problem for captivity. This predator is so perfectly built for open water that no aquarium has been able to keep it for long, let alone breed it. Great whites are large, powerful hunters that never truly stop swimming, covering huge distances in the wild as they patrol coastlines and deep water. In captivity, that lifestyle turns against them. Even in enormous tanks, they often collide with walls, scrape their noses and fins, or start to circle in tight, unnatural patterns. Many refuse food, become stressed, and weaken quickly. Aquariums that have tried to keep them usually see the same pattern. After days or weeks, the shark either dies or must be released for its own survival. Until we can keep them alive and healthy for years, breeding them in captivity remains effectively impossible. Even the great white looks manageable next to the blue whale, the largest creature ever known to live on Earth. Unlike many dolphins and smaller whales, blue whales have never been kept in captivity, and breeding them in enclosures is far beyond anything we can realistically attempt. To house even a single animal, you would need a tank so vast and deep that it would still feel like a tiny box compared to the open ocean, and the cost of building and maintaining it would be enormous. On top of the practical limits, there are legal and ethical barriers. Many people already oppose keeping much smaller whales in marine parks, so capturing and confining blue whales would face overwhelming resistance. With no captive animals, no facilities designed for them, and almost no public support for trying, blue whales remain a species that will only ever breed in the wild. Not all impossible cases live in water. The Javan rhinoceros, is one of the rarest large mammals on land, and it is a species that we have never learned to breed in captivity. Today, every known Javan rhino lives in a single national park at the western tip of Java, moving through dense, lowland forest and swamp. In the past, a small number were caught and sent to zoos, but they fared badly. None ever produced a calf, and the last captive Javan rhino died in 1907, long before modern breeding techniques were developed. Because no living animals are kept under human care now, there is no possibility of building a backup population in enclosures, even if we wanted to. Any future attempt would mean capturing some of the last wild rhinos, stressing them and hoping they survive confinement better than their predecessors did. For a species already down to a few dozen individuals in one fragile place, that risk is simply too high. All of these animals face very different problems, but together, they show that saying we will just breed them in captivity is often more wishful thinking than a real plan. Great white sharks that die before we can even understand their needs, three-fingered sloths that fall apart when you take them out of the canopy, blue whales and dugongs that do not fit inside any tank we can build, pangolins and tarsiers that starve or break under stress, and Javan rhinos that we left in the wild until there were none left to learn from in zoos. Each one marks a limit of what our concrete walls and controlled diets can do. Captive breeding can be powerful, but it cannot replace lost oceans, forests, and grasslands, and it cannot save every species we push to the edge.